So essentially you're predicting the entire U.S. financial system will come to a halt.
That's right. Like I said, we'll see a total breakdown of the stock market. Imagine 2008, Black Monday, and the crash of 29, all happening in a single morning. And let me tell you something, if you don't think this can happen right here in America, wake up. It's already being discussed.
When Beijing deploys defense systems to disputed South China Sea, tensions start to escalate between China and the United States in the South China Sea. At this moment, we have unprecedented military training, military drills, FEMA training in the US, in Russia and on Russian border, and in the South China Sea. We have Obama administration continue its drift towards global conflict through an openly confrontational policy towards Beijing in the South China Sea and against Russia in Eastern Europe. The United States lost a sense of the reality when we have the global conflict about to start in the South China Sea, in Syria and in Eastern Europe on Russian border, as China reportedly put surface-to-air missile systems on South China Sea islands. We have 2 US aircraft carriers launching the military drills in waters neighboring the South China Sea. In the latest of a series of provocative military exercises near Chinese territorial waters, the US Stennis and US Ronald Reagan began conducting air defense drills, long-range strikes, and sea surveillance in the Philippine Sea. Also, when we have China sending some of its most advanced naval assets to the South China Sea for scheduled exercise. The exercise will be focusing on anti-missile warfare. Among the ships sent by China, there was missile destroyer Hefei, missile frigate Sanya, and supply ship Honggu, along with missile destroyers Lonzo and Guangzhou, and missile frigate Yuli. As part of its military boost, China plans to increase its fleet of Navy strategic transport aircraft. Large-scale naval war games will take place in the East China Sea, along China's western border, in the latest provocative act by the US government to isolate China.
President Obama is back at the White House this morning after a week in the Middle East and Europe. Air Force One touched down Monday evening at Joint Base Andrews outside Washington. We spoke with the president yesterday in Germany in a wide-ranging interview. He had just announced 250 more American troops will go to Syria. They will help in the fight against ISIS, also known as ISIL. Let me pivot to China. Your Secretary of Defense has been in the region. How aggressive do you see the action in the South China Sea? And do you worry that they will cross some line in which you'll have to respond more aggressively?
I've been consistent since I've been president in believing that a productive, candid relationship between the United States and China is vital, not just to our two countries, but to world peace and security. We're a lot better off with a China that feels confident.
It's not a zero-sum game.
It's not a zero-sum game. What is true, though, is that they have a tendency to view some of the immediate regional issues or disputes as a zero-sum game. So with respect to the South China Sea, rather than operate under international norms and rules, their attitude is we're the biggest kids around here and we're going to push aside the Philippines or the Vietnamese. But it doesn't mean that we're trying to act against China. We just want them to be partners with us. And where they break out of international rules and norms, we're going to hold them to account.
Why does China need more than 1,000 new aircraft, which can carry up to 66 tons of cargo, and has the flight range of 3,200 miles? Nearly $5 trillion in trade passes annually through this region in the South China Sea. Even smallest provocation against China in this area will lead to a major conflict, no doubt about it. The key point is that, in the case of the conflict in the South China Sea, the whole financial world, including the dollar, will collapse like a house of cards. China is threatening its presence in the region by reclaiming artificial islands and building infrastructure on them, including airstrips capable of launching warplanes. China is saying that such actions are aimed at better weather forecast, emergency response, and other crucial missions. The US is rejecting China's claims, challenges Beijing by conducting so-called freedom of navigation missions. Washington sends military ships and warplanes to the South China Sea. China considers those actions by Washington a direct threat.
This is an emergency broadcast. This is a direct message to the Department of Defense, all four branches of the military, active duty, service members, veterans, their families, state governments, local governments, and the media. We are going to display 100% irrevocable proof that there is a global move, not just here, but all over the world, to militarize police and to put standing armies on the streets to suppress the population and to carry out political operations.
When Chinese aircraft carrier reportedly docks at Tartus, Syria, Chinese fighter jets and helicopters to assist Russia in the battle against US-backed proxies in Syria, we have Russia and China teaming up to beef up military operations which may serve both nations strategically against a common enemy, the United States. The joint military operations may also affect China's bid in the South China Sea, where China is getting strong objections from other countries. The Chinese and Russian military are to hold first ever joint exercise on how to counter an incidental or provocative missile attack. It comes as the US and South Korea are discussing the deployment of THAAD missile interceptors in Asia. Russia and China are prepared to conduct their first computer-assisted missile defense exercise. Russia and China are saying that the drill was not directed against any third party. The announcement comes after Moscow announced its plan to increase joint exercises with China. The Russian and Chinese defense ministers decided to hold the first air and space security joint computer-assisted command and staff exercise. When we have investors pulling out their money from the UK, we have China buying up gold and buying gold vault in the UK. We have investment funds from around the world worth 10 trillion US dollars participating in St. Petersburg Economic Forum in Russia, making historic business deals. When we have China establishing a new web-based platform for selling goods, we have 150,000 Chinese companies to enter the Russian market over the next few years. Very simple question to you. Do you think that 150,000 Chinese companies, are they going to use the dollar for conducting the business in Russia? Surprise, surprise, not very far away from Moscow, we have unprecedented NATO military buildup and military drills on land, sea and air. Also, we have missile defense shields being activated in Poland and Romania. The military drills are so huge that I had to make 5 separate videos. Guys, the stage is set for the global conflict in Ukraine and in the South China Sea. When North Korea tests launching a ballistic missile, we have the joint United States, South Korea, and Japanese missile defense drills, which are meant to counter China, not North Korea. The naval exercises are likely to become the first step in expanding United States global missile defense network into Asia. Military forces from the United States, South Korea, and Japan are set to conduct their first joint missile defense drills. South Korea, United States, and Japan, using the warship-based multi-purpose tracking system, the exercise will focus on joint missile detection. The Japanese newspaper Asahi has reported that South Korea, the United States, and Japan will also be training for the interception and destruction of ballistic missiles. Let me ask you, from which country they're expecting the ballistic missiles to come? Most likely from China. Japan and Australia kicked off their joint military exercises in Sydney. Japan opened a new radar station that will provide intelligence over the islands claimed by China in the South China Sea.
And what about North Korea, finally?
North Korea is a massive challenge. Our first priority is to protect the American people and our allies, the Republic of Korea, Japan, that are vulnerable to the provocative actions that North Korea is engaging in. They are erratic enough. Their leader is personally irresponsible enough that we don't want them getting close. But it's not something that lends itself to an easy solution. We could obviously destroy North Korea with our arsenals, but aside from the humanitarian costs of that, they are right next door to our vital ally, Republic of Korea. One of the things that we have been doing is spending a lot more time positioning our missile defense systems so that even as we try to resolve the underlying problem of nuclear development inside of North Korea, we're also setting up a shield that can at least block the relatively low-level threats that they're posing right now.
President Obama has launched the U.S. most massive military buildup close to Russian and Chinese borders. This piece of information clearly shows a very strong message of the beginning of a major conflict between major superpowers such as NATO, Russia, and China. As you're watching this video, we have missile defense shields being set up and being installed in Israel, in North Korea, Eastern Europe, and Russia. When United States is testing its new intercontinental ballistic missiles, we have Canada asking to join US missile shield to enhance national security. Canada has suggested it may join the US missile defense shield. Then we have the installation of the US missile shield in Eastern Europe along Russian border. Russia has opposed US and NATO plans to deploy anti-missile systems close to borders with Russia. Washington says that the anti-missile system would not threaten Russian security. Russia will restore a missile attack warning station near Crimea to counter an increasing NATO activity in the Black Sea. We have 4,000 cruise missiles pointed at Putin that would enable Obama to deliver precision-guided non-nuclear airstrikes anywhere inside Russia in less than an hour. When Putin calling Obama's new missile shield in Eastern Europe along Russian border a direct threat, we have Poland setting up a new missile shield. And then we have Romania setting up a new missile shield. We have US anti-missile base in Poland put by Obama, and in Kaliningrad we have Putin threatening to put nuclear missiles there. We have Putin activating S-400 defense systems all around Russian border with Eastern Europe, and we have nuclear missile systems patrolling Moscow streets. We have Norway and the US planning to establish a new military radar post in Vardø, Finnmark, in addition to the already existing US Globus 2 radar system. Let me show you on the map where all the missile defense shields are being set up and being installed in Eastern Europe. Just look at this map. Here we have Putin in Moscow, placing S-400 defense systems all around Moscow, and we have some in Kaliningrad. Training at unprecedented scale. Watch my new video on military training and military hardware movement by Putin and by Obama in these countries. The link to my new video, as always, will be below in the description box. Just a little bit more than 70 years ago, we had a great war between major superpowers. Today, in the same place, on the same map, we have the same superpowers in the face of NATO and Russia preparing for a major war. Just remember, only a little bit more than 70 years ago in the same place on this map, millions and millions of people died fighting for the same forces that are preparing a major conflict today. My biggest concern is that during World War II, there was no nuclear weapons available in such a big amount that is available today. And in the same place on this map, there was no nuclear power plants, so the war was limited in scope.
While the Allied forces lost hundreds of thousands of citizens during the course of the conflict, at least 27 million Soviets were killed during what's known in Russia as the Great Patriotic War. The Eastern Front also proved the deadliest for Nazi Germany, with 74% of their war deaths occurring there. Almost every single Soviet family suffered the horrors of this war. Only 37% of all men drafted to the front line survived till the end of the conflict.